everyone, my name is Linnea Stock, and in today's Psych Talk, we're diving into how the brain helps us forget on purpose. This presentation breaks down a study by Benoit, Holbert, Huddleston, and Anderson that looks at the science of memory suppression and what it might mean for real-life challenges like trauma and intrusive thoughts. What's this study about? This study explores how people push intrusive memories out of awareness, like when something embarrassing pops in your head and you try to block it. The authors focus on the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which handles cognitive control, and the hippocampus, which stores and retrieves memories. Their question, can the prefrontal cortex actively shut down memory retrieval in the hippocampus and get better at it over time? How did they study it? They used the think-no-think paradigm. Participants were taught to associate cue words with pictures of faces or places. The researchers used fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, which tracks blood flow in the brain. Inside the scanner, participants saw cues again and were told to either recall or suppress the image. After each trial, they self-reported whether the memory came to mind, while the fMRI tracked brain activity. Who were the participants? The study began with 18 right-handed participants, aged 18 to 30, but 2 were excluded, 1 for poor memory and 1 for not following instructions, leaving 16. The final group had equal numbers of men and women, but the study did not report race, income, or education. What did they find? The results showed that when an unwanted memory intruded, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex became more active, helping suppress the hippocampus. As the task went on, memory intrusions became less frequent, suggesting that the brain improved at suppression. However, faces and places were not suppressed equally. Suppression was stronger and clearer for place memories. For faces, the hippocampal suppression wasn't as strong, suggesting that the brain may handle different types of memories in different ways. Strengths of the study. There were several strengths. It used a proven method, the think-no-think paradigm. It also combined brain imaging with behavioral data. Furthermore, it was published in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience, which is a respected peer-reviewed journal for neuroscience. Additionally, the authors are affiliated with prestigious research institutions such as Harvard, Princeton, and Cambridge, adding credibility. That being said, here are 5 important weaknesses. There was a small sample size, only 16 participants were included in the final analysis, which reduces statistical power. Additionally, there was a lack of participant diversity. The study did not report participants' race, income, or education level. That limits its relevance to the general population. Furthermore, there were inconsistent findings. Suppression worked better for place memories, but not as well for face memories. This weakens the claim that memory suppression is generalizable. Furthermore, subjective self-reports were also a flaw. Memory intrusions were reported by participants themselves. These reports could be biased or misunderstood. Lastly, there was no long-term follow-up. The study only looked at short-term effects. We don't know whether suppression benefits last beyond the single session. Now let's look at 3 confounding variables. Strategy variability. Participants used their own methods to suppress memories. Some might have imagined blank screens, while others distracted themselves. This lack of standardization introduces noise into the data. Additionally, fatigue or scanner stress. Lying in an MRI machine for long periods can be physically and mentally exhausting. Fatigue might lower memory performance or make suppression seem more successful simply because participants were too tired to recall. Lastly, emotional resonance of images. Some images may have triggered personal associations or stronger emotional reactions in certain participants. This wasn't controlled for, and emotional content can heavily influence memory intrusiveness and difficulty of suppressing. What was missing? This study also left some things out. It didn't include trauma-exposed or clinical populations, even though memory suppression is highly relevant to people with PTSD or anxiety disorders. It also didn't assess emotional intensity of the images, which is a major factor in how well a memory sticks. And finally, there was no exploration of personality traits or cognitive differences that might impact suppression ability. So, can we forget on purpose? This study suggests yes. With repeated attempts, the brain can become more efficient at pushing intrusive memories out of awareness. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex steps in to quiet down the hippocampus, and with practice, this top-down control gets stronger. But for this research to apply in therapy or real-world trauma work, we need broader studies with diverse participants, long-term tracking, and clinical comparisons.